You ever get an HOA bill and think there's no way these people are serious? Well, I got one that made me laugh so hard I nearly spit out my coffee, until I realized they were dead serious. It was a bright Monday morning when I found the envelope in my mailbox. A thick cream-colored letter stamped with the golden logo of the Silver Pines HOA. That logo had annoyed me since the day I moved in, too fancy for a neighborhood where half the houses still had original AIDS siding. I tore it open and read, "Dear Mr. Quinlan Rives, you are being charged $175 for snow removal services provided on Winter Pine Lane as per HOA policy." I stopped reading Winter Pine Lane. That's my road. I mean that literally. I built it. When I bought this land 5 years ago, the county refused to pave the half-mile stretch leading to my property. So, I paid for it myself, dug the drainage, laid gravel, even hired my cousin's crew to pour the asphalt. It's private, it's mine, and the HOA, which didn't even exist when I moved in, has no jurisdiction over it. I stormed out of the house, letter in hand, and marched straight to the HOA office trailer parked near the clubhouse. And who should be sitting behind the front desk but the queen of petty herself, Wanda Olson. Wanda's the kind of woman who wears heels to inspect people's lawns and acts like she's the mayor of a town no one asked for. She lifted her head when I walked in, glasses sliding down her nose. "Good morning, Mr. Arrives," she said, like she didn't just try to rob me, with a smile. "How can I help you?" "You can start by explaining why I'm being charged for snow removal on a road I built and maintain myself." Her lips twitched. "Oh well, the snow plow we hired last month cleared the entire stretch of Winter Pine Lane. We must all contribute equally, Mr. Rives." I leaned on the counter. "That road isn't part of the OA. It's private property. I have the deed, the invoices and the maintenance permits to prove it." She gave a little laugh. "Mr. Rives, roads that intersect with OA territory are subject to community use. It's all in the charter." I narrowed my eyes. "I've read your charter. It doesn't mention my road, and community use doesn't mean you get to charge me for something I didn't authorize." Her tone sharpened. "If you refuse to pay, we'll have no choice but to place a lien." I stared at her, stunned. "Lien on land you don't even own?" Wanda stood, all 5'5" of fury wrapped in pastel polyester. "We'll see what the board thinks." I walked out, heart pounding, but not from fear. No, I was already planning my next move. They picked the wrong guy to mess with. By the time I got back to the house, I already knew what I needed to do. I wasn't going to play defense. No, I was going to dismantle whatever scheme Wanda and her cronies cooked up piece by piece. First, I pulled the original surveyor's report from the metal file cabinet in my study. The one stamped and signed by the county engineer the year I secured the permits for the road. It had clear boundary lines showing that Winter Pine Lane started at the public road and ran straight through the southeast edge of my property, never touching the newly incorporated HOA territory. I also dug out the receipts for the road work, the gravel order from the quarry, the asphalt delivery invoices, labor contracts, all dated long before the HOA was even formed. Then I called my neighbor Ellie. She lived 2 properties down on the other side of the cul-de-sac the HOA did manage. She was a retired land use attorney, the kind of person who once sued a city for building a sidewalk too close to her rose bushes and won. If anyone could sniff out over each, it was her. Ellie picked up after 2 rings. "Quinlan," she said, her voice calm and clipped. "I heard they're trying to bill you for that road." "They already did," I said, "and Wanda threatened a lien." She went quiet for a second. "Then that's unlawful. They have no standing if they push that. It's extortion. Send me what you have. I'll look over it tonight." I spent the afternoon scanning documents and emailing them to her. I also took a drive up Winter Pine Lane and photographed every inch from the property markers to the private road, signs I'd posted back in year 1, just in case they tried to claim it was public access. Now I even got a shot of the small metal plaque near the entrance, that read "constructed and maintained by Quinlan Rives, 2019. I'd forgotten it was even there, but now it felt like a silver bullet. The next morning, Ellie showed up on my porch with a thick folder and a look I hadn't seen before, something between outrage and satisfaction. "They're bluffing," she said, stepping inside. "But one of their board members crossed a line." I shut the door behind her. "What do you mean?" "They submitted a maintenance report to the county listing your road as part of the HOA's managed infrastructure. That's how they justified the snowplow expense. It's a forged document. They even used a fake parcel ID." My stomach dropped. "They falsified county records." She opened the folder and pointed to the entry right there. "That's your road's legal identifier, but they altered the ownership status and tacked it onto the HOA's own. If the county hadn't flagged the discrepancy, we wouldn't have caught it. This isn't just HOA overreach anymore. It's document fraud." I sat down in the kitchen trying to wrap my head around the level of planning that must have taken. Wanda signed off on this, her signature's on the bottom, Ellie said, and so is the treasurer's. That afternoon, we drove to the county registrar's office. Ellie knew the clerk behind the desk, a balding man named Rick, who looked more like a baseball coach than a government employee. She handed him the folder, told him where to look, and within 15 minutes, he confirmed everything. They used our digital submission form under a generic association ID, he said, squinting at the screen. But this parcel hasn't changed hands in years. That's your name on the deed. They can't just add it to their infrastructure map. Can I file a fraud complaint? I asked. You should. He leaned back, tapping his pen. Actually, this may constitute attempted property seizure. I'll notify the Registrar General. You might want to loop in the sheriff's office. By sunset, I was back home with a county investigator's card in my pocket and an open case number. I knew better than to expect immediate results, but the wheels were turning. And I wasn't done. That evening, I attended the monthly HOA board meeting. They usually held it in the clubhouse lounge, complete with coffee urns and folding chairs. I arrived 5 minutes early, wearing my work boots and a plain gray jacket, and took a seat near the back. The room filled quickly, mostly older residents who only came for the free cookies and to complain about dog poop. Wanda sat at the head of the table, flanked by 4 other board members. She didn't see me at first. The meeting droned on for 20 minutes: landscaping, pool repairs, a broken gate sensor. Then Wanda cleared her throat and pulled out a paper. One final note, she said. We've issued snow removal invoices for Winter Pine Lane, which has been added to our maintenance zone. Non-compliance will result in progressive enforcement. I stood up. Question. I said loud enough to turn a few heads. Can you explain why you're charging residents for work done on private property you don't own? Wanda froze, but only for a second. As per the community charter, any roadway used by multiple residents, that road isn't in your jurisdiction, I said. And you know it. She narrowed her eyes. Mr. Rives, we've already resolved this matter with the county. No, I said, lifting the printed verification from the registrar's office. The county flagged your filing as fraudulent. You submitted a forged document using a fake parcel ID. I have the case number, witness testimony, and a pending investigation. The room went dead silent. One of the board members, a lanky man with a mustache that looked like it had been drawn on, leaned toward Wanda. You didn't say anything about a fraud filing. Wanda's voice faltered. It's a misunderstanding. The form was signed by you and your treasurer. I cut in. That's not a misunderstanding. That's attempted annexation. I turned to the room. You've all been paying fees to a board that's willing to lie to the county to steal property. You think that's the only thing they're doing under the table? Murmurs erupted. 2 residents stood up and walked out. An older couple near the front started flipping through their own fee statements. The treasurer, a wary man named Glenn, stood up and said, We didn't forge anything. We were told that road was common use. Ellie stepped into the doorway behind me. That's strange, she said, holding up a printed email. Because I requested the board's internal communications, and nowhere does it mention any legal review or approval. In fact, I found this a message from Wanda saying, and I quote, once the county has it on file, he'll have no choice but to pay. That's intent, Glenn. Wanda stood, voice sharp. Now you had no right to access those emails. They were submitted under the Freedom of Information clause in your bylaws. Ellie said, I helped write that clause for the city of Fairview. You're a registered association. Your internal deliberations are subject to it. Someone in the back let out a low whistle. I looked at Wanda. You wanted to make an example out of me. You wanted to expand your reach and figured I wouldn't fight back. You picked the wrong road. That night, I received an email from the sheriff's office confirming that the HOA's filing was under criminal review. Wanda and Glenn were both named in the report. The board was instructed to freeze all enforcement actions until the investigation concluded. 3 days later, a notice went up on the clubhouse door. Emergency meeting, board reorganization vote. I didn't attend. I didn't need to. By the end of the week, Wanda's car was gone from her driveway, her name erased from the OA website. Winter Pine Lane stayed just as it was, private, quiet, and untouched, just the way I built it. The following week brought a strange quiet to the neighborhood, not the good kind either. Mailboxes were left unopened. Lawn chairs disappeared from porches. People who used to wave suddenly found something to examine on the ground as I passed. It was like everyone had been told to hold their breath. I didn't blame them. No one wanted to get caught in the fallout. Not now that the HOA had its name wrapped up in a criminal investigation. But I wasn't planning on letting things settle quietly. Not after what Ellie and I uncovered next. Late Thursday morning, I knocked on her door with a flash drive in hand. She opened up, brushing flour off her apron, and raised an eyebrow. You need to see this. I said, stepping inside. I'd spent the last 2 days combing through the HOA's digital portal, the one every homeowner had access to, but few ever used. Most folks only logged in to dispute a fee or download a pool pass. But there was a section labeled Financial Disclosures, and once I clicked through, I realized no one had touched it in years. I plugged the drive into her laptop and opened the spreadsheets. Look at the vendor payments. See anything weird? She scrolled. $3,000 for seasonal pathway clearance. That's not even a real category. Check the routing number. Her hands paused on the keyboard. This account ends in the same 4 digits as the HOA's landscaping contractor. I nodded. Now open this tab. She did. It was a list of registered businesses from the State Commerce Database. One of them, ClearPath Solutions, had been formed only 8 months ago. Listed owner Glenn Harbridge, treasurer of the HOA. Ellie let out a slow breath and leaned back. He created a fake company to funnel association fees into his own pocket. More than once, look at the snow removal charges. Same account, same address. This goes beyond the road. She said they've been billing the entire community for services that either didn't happen or they paid themselves to do. We sat in silence for a few seconds. Then I said, "You think the county investigator we filed with is equipped for this? They'll forward it to the district attorney," she said. "But let's not wait." That afternoon, we met with a local prosecutor, an old friend of hers who now worked white-collar crimes for the Commonwealth Attorney's Office. He listened carefully, asked a half-dozen questions, then requested a full copy of the files. "I'll have someone pull their tax records," he said. "If this company's real on paper, but not in practice, and they're billing a nonprofit association, then we're looking at felony fraud." By the next morning, subpoenas were issued. The HOA office trailer was taped off by noon. Glenn was escorted out of his house in a windbreaker and handcuffs, his face turning purple as he shouted something about a misunderstanding. A few neighbors watched from their porches, but didn't say a word. Wanda somehow had vanished. Her house sat dark for 3 days before someone noticed the "For Sale by Owner" sign zip-tied to the front gate. No agent listed, no contact number, just a handwritten note inside the door saying, "Relocating, do not disturb." I didn't have to dig. The prosecutor's office tracked her credit card to a hotel 2 towns over, where she'd checked in under her sister's name. She was picked up quietly. No cuffs this time, just an officer at the door and a warrant with her name on it. Ellie called me that evening. "They've got enough to charge them both. Embezzlement, forgery, tax evasion. The whole package." "What happens to the HOA?" I asked. "Well, that's the kicker," she said. "Without a functioning board, it defaults into administrative review. The county can suspend its authority until a new election is held. So, no more enforcement, no more fees for now, no more anything. They can't collect dues, issue fines, or hold meetings without a certified quorum." I leaned back in my chair and let that sink in. That weekend, a few neighbors gathered at the park bench near the mailboxes. No one called it a meeting, but that's what it turned into. Jeff, the guy who owned the small bakery near the freeway exit, asked the question we were all thinking. What do we do now? A woman named Rosa, who had lived here since before the HOA even formed, said, "We should start over. Elect people we trust, people who live here full-time, no more outsourcing our own decisions." There were nods, not enthusiastic ones, but honest. Tired maybe, but hopeful. I spoke up. "If we do this again, we need transparency. Every dollar accounted for, every policy voted on, no more backroom deals, and we leave private property alone." A few chuckled at that. Even Jeff. Ellie stood near the edge of the group, arms crossed, listening. When she finally spoke, it was like someone drawing a line in the sand. "We need bylaws that prevent what just happened. Term limits, oversight, and quarterly audits by someone not living here. I'll volunteer to draft the new charter." No one objected. The next morning, a notice went out by email and letter. Temporary suspension of HOA operations pending reorganization. It was official, the association had been declawed, but the fight wasn't over. Weeks passed. County auditors dug deeper and found that Glenn's fake company had been used not just for snow removal, but for irrigation repairs, gate maintenance, and even community event catering. All fake. Altogether, he and Wanda had skimmed more than $80,000 from residents over the past 2 years. When their trial began, I attended the opening session. The courtroom was full of familiar faces, neighbors who had paid dues in good faith, only to be duped by a pair of power-hungry opportunists. The prosecutor laid it out clearly. Shell companies, forged maintenance logs, inflated invoices. The jury didn't take long. Both were found guilty on multiple counts. Glenn was sentenced to 6 years, 1 to 3, with probation. The judge also ruled that the funds be repaid using the proceeds from the sale of their homes, both of which had already been seized. Back in the neighborhood, things began to change. Not overnight, but steadily. The new board was made up of 5 people, all elected in a public vote held in the clubhouse. No one ran unopposed. Every rule was debated openly and every resident had a say. The HOA no longer touched anything outside its legal boundary in Winter Pine Lane. That stayed exactly the way it was. One morning, a man from the new board came by with a clipboard. "We're doing a survey," he said, "trying to figure out if folks want to keep the HOA or dissolve it entirely." I looked down at the paper. Only one question. "Do you believe the HOA serves the best interest of the community?" I checked the box marked no and handed it back. He nodded. "You're not alone." That spring, a petition circulated. It needed a supermajority to dissolve the HOA permanently. It got it in 2 weeks. The signs came down. The private security contract was canceled and the trailer that once served as the HOA office was towed away, leaving behind 2 tire ruts and a patch of gravel. Life returned to something resembling normal. I still mowed my own lawn, fixed my own fence, and salted my own road every winter. But now I did it without anyone trying to charge me for the work I already did. And if anyone ever forgot who really owned Winter Pine Lane, they only had to look at the metal plaque by the entrance. Still standing, still mine. 3 months after the HOA was dissolved, things in Silver Pines began to resemble an actual neighborhood again. Without the board breathing down everyone's neck, people started talking to each other like humans instead of walking violations. Kids rode their bikes without being chased down for helmet infractions. Lawns grew a little freer. Mailboxes weren't measured with rulers anymore. One afternoon, I was patching a soft spot on the shoulder of Winter Pine Lane when a county truck pulled up. The driver stepped out, a tall guy in a forest green jacket with a clipboard tucked under one arm. "Quinlan Rives, that's me." He extended a hand. "Avon Decker, County Infrastructure Oversight. I'm following up on the fraud case tied to your HOA. There's a new angle. Mind if I ask a few things?" I waved him over. "What's going on now?" He flipped a few pages and tapped one. "We've been reviewing maintenance reimbursements from the past 2 fiscal years. Turns out your HOA was submitting claims to the county for road work reimbursements on properties they didn't own." I set down my shovel. "You're telling me they were getting money for work they never paid for on roads like mine?" "Exactly. They filed under a Community Infrastructure Assistance Program. It's meant for small associations that handle public easements, but your road was never listed as public use. They manufactured access rights in their filings." I crossed my arms. "How much money are we talking about?" "Just over $22,000. All through forged maintenance logs, fake contractor receipts, and a fabricated access easement that was never recorded. The real kicker? They submitted digital signatures from residents as proof of authorization, including yours. I never signed anything. We know that's why we're escalating it." The next day, I was subpoenaed to testify before a grand jury reviewing additional charges against Glenn and Wanda. The previous trial had already buried them in fraud convictions. But this was different. This wasn't just about stealing from residents. It was defrauding a government program. That came with federal implications. Glenn had tried to negotiate a reduced sentence earlier, offering to make restitution if the charges stopped there. But this new development voided any deal he thought he had. His attorney tried to argue he was acting under misunderstood policy interpretation, but the forged digital signatures murdered that defense in its tracks. When I testified, I was shown a document with a scan of my name beside an authorization line. It was a blurry PDF, clearly doctored. I pointed out that the signature matched a scanned version from a permit I'd submitted years earlier for drainage work 1 that had been on file with the HOA. They lifted it from a legitimate file and pasted it into this form. I said to the panel, "They didn't just fake approval. They stole my identity to do it." The county's forensic expert confirmed it. The digital trail led directly back to Wanda's old OA laptop, which had been seized and was still surprisingly intact. She'd used a backdoor PDF editor to modify at least 7 resident forms. It was enough to elevate the charges to criminal identity fraud and federal grant abuse. The DA filed a motion to consolidate the new charges into a federal case. The judge approved it. Just like that, Glenn and Wanda were headed for a second trial, this time in federal court. Word spread quickly, and it hit the local news within days. Reporters came sniffing around the neighborhood hoping someone would go on record. I declined, but Ellie didn't. On camera, she laid it out plainly. They tried to take a man's private road, lied about it, and then used his name to steal money from the government. If we hadn't caught it, they'd still be doing it. The footage aired that evening, and the fallout was immediate. The state's Office of Civic Oversight launched a full audit into every HOA in the county. County officials were grilled about how the grant money was approved in the first place. Meanwhile, the new Neighborhood Council, a volunteer group formed after the OA's collapse, voted to officially disband any remaining A structure. They filed full dissolution paperwork with the state, and the neighborhood was formally reclassified as an unmanaged private community. We didn't need a board anymore. We had each other? Weeks later, I was called back to court for the sentencing phase of the new federal charges. Glenn looked like he hadn't slept in months. Wanda wouldn't meet anyone's eyes. The judge read the charges aloud: wire fraud, identity theft, and misuse of federal program funds. Glenn received an additional 8 years to be served consecutively with his previous sentence. Wanda got 5 with no probation this time. After the hearing, a federal agent approached me in the hallway. "I've worked HOA cases before," he said. "But this one, it's the first time I've seen an HOA try to rewrite property law like it's a suggestion." They thought no one would push back. I said they were wrong. Back home, things were different, more relaxed, but more connected too. Without the HOA acting as a wedge, neighbors started helping each other in ways I hadn't seen before. Rosa started a weekend cleanup crew to keep the trails tidy. Jeff coordinated a bulk trash pickup once a month. Ellie helped draft a set of voluntary community guidelines. Nothing enforceable, just common sense stuff people agreed on. And me, I kept maintaining my road, but I also installed a new sign at the entrance, not the old metal plaque. This one was bigger, made of carved cedar set in concrete. Winter Pine Lane, private property built and maintained by residents, no HOA jurisdiction. A few days after I put it up, a kid riding his bike stopped in front of it. He read it out loud, then looked at me as I watered the edge of the gravel. "Did you really build a road all by yourself? Had a little help?" I said. "But yeah, started with a shovel and a lot of stubborn." He nodded, impressed. "Cool." He rode off down the lane, tires humming over the asphalt I'd poured with my own hands. That night, a few neighbors came by with folding chairs and a cooler. No agenda, just a clear sky, a few stories, and some laughter. No one mentioned board meetings. No one argued over mailbox colors. And not a single person asked what the bylaws said. For the first time in a long while, it felt like we actually lived in a neighborhood. Not a managed community, a real one.